Welcome to the Stephen Mansfield audio podcast.
This podcast is going to be controversial because I want to talk to you about Barack Obama's faith. In fact, I'm titling this Obama's Faith, Was I Right? I'm asking the question, was I right about Obama's faith? Let me explain for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about. When Barack Obama first ran for president in 2008, I came out with a book called The Faith of Barack Obama. I had already written The Faith of George W. Bush back in 2003. That was just before Bush's second run for president. I had a bit of a reputation as a man who wrote about faith and politics, particularly presidential faith and politics. And so sensing that Barack Obama was a little bit of a phenomenon, sensing that he probably was going to win the election, I wrote The Faith of Barack Obama. Well, people were relatively surprised, especially on the right. I am an evangelical. I am a conservative. And so people were surprised that I had written a book about Barack Obama's faith, which was, as many people said at the time, kind. In other words, I wasn't trying to bash, I was trying to understand. And what many people who even know who I am out there in the world, and certainly those who read my books may not understand, is that while I certainly advocate for certain causes, if you look over the scope of all of my books, and I think I've done about 23, 24 now, I certainly advocate for causes. I certainly write about people in a way so as to bring out the lessons of their lives. I write about men. I've written about churches. I've written about good business. I've written about good leadership. I've written about race issues. All of these I care about deeply. But to the extent that I'm a scholar of anything, I am a scholar of presidential politics and faith. And so having written The Faith of George W. Bush, it was a natural jump for me to write The Faith of Barack Obama and to write it in a way so as to understand what Barack Obama's faith was. I wasn't advocating for him any more than I advocated for Bush in that book. I wanted to understand. By the way, I don't mind you knowing that whoever becomes president in 2016, I'm very likely to write the faith of that person because I believe, as I said many times before, that if a politician's faith is sincere, it's the most important thing about him or her, and it will define what they do in office. So among all the other things that we want to know about our candidates and about our elected officials, we certainly want to know about their faith, especially if it's a sincere faith, because it will define them. We send people to public office in a democracy under the assumption they're going to do the will of the people. We know, of course, they're going to do both the will of the people and do what they consider to be wise or right. However, there's also this third factor, and that is the matter of their faith. And sometimes the voters are caught off guard by how the faith of a candidate or a person who ends up in office guides them and shapes their policies. So I'm very interested in religion, particularly as it affects presidential politics, and I will certainly write on that subject again. Perhaps, who knows, everybody who becomes president between now and the time I die, I may do a book about that person because I find the whole area to be very, very interesting. Well, when I wrote The Faith of Barack Obama, people on the right were very, very upset with me. And the reason was that I had taken Barack Obama's faith seriously, and I had also said that he was a Christian. Well, at that time, some of you may not be aware, at that time, around 30% of Americans said that they believed that Barack Obama was a Muslim. Now, part of it was his name, part of it was his skin color, part of it was that before, in his childhood, he spent some years in Indonesia. Part of it was perhaps his facility in talking about Muslim issues. I'm not 100% sure what would have convinced people of that, but I took the view that he was, in fact, a Christian. Now, I want to make sure I explain to you that when I say that someone's a Christian, I'm not God, and so I'm not saying this person's going to heaven. I'm not saying that I know for sure what their eternal state is or what their exactly what their relationship with the risen Christ is, but I am saying that that's the faith they affiliate with. And so I disagreed with those who said that Barack Obama was a Muslim, and I believe that he was a Christian. And I cannot tell you how controversial it was. I got death threats. I had speeches canceled. I had people very upset with me. Not long ago, I was on a Hannity show with Mark Burnett and Roma Downey, and one of the other politicians who was there, a female, greeted me and was gracious, and then said, I love what you do, but you are absolutely wrong about Barack Obama. He's a devil. And this was the kind of fire that happened at the time. People were really upset with me. So now I ask the question as we head into the 2016 presidential election, was I wrong about Barack Obama? Was I wrong to say he was a Christian? Was I wrong to say that he was not a Muslim? Was I wrong to take his faith seriously? And I'll have to say, all these years later, that I look honestly at it. I'm certainly willing to admit I might have been wrong. But I have to tell you that I am more convinced now than ever that while Barack Obama is very left-leaning in his politics, and I do not agree with him about much of anything politically. In fact, I'll go even further and say I will have to say at this point in his presidency, 6 years in or so, that Barack Obama may rank amongst the worst 5 presidents in American history. It really has been a failed presidency thus far, except for a few matters. And unless he really turns around in the last 2 years to 18 months, the Obama presidency is going to rank as one of the worst in history. But my question, my charge, my challenge was to try as best I could to understand what Obama's faith was. And I'm a little surprised that even those who dislike Barack Obama, have a hard time understanding what his faith might be. Almost all of us know of a clergyman, they're probably something like Episcopalian in our communities, who love Jesus, are serious about Jesus, believe he's the Son of God, believe that there was a resurrection of Jesus. But they are liberal on almost every single theological and political issue. They pray to Jesus, they bow to Jesus, they take the Eucharist on Sunday mornings, they believe in confession, they believe in miracles. Yet, they may not believe all of Scripture is inspired. They may be welcoming and accommodating of gays and gay marriage. They are pro-abortion, perhaps, et cetera, et cetera. This is quite frankly the standard Episcopal Church. This is quite frankly the standard United Church of Christ. This is the standard Lutheranism. This is pretty common, and so it surprised me when people had a hard time believing that Barack Obama would believe in Jesus Christ, believe he's the Son of God, believe that God raised him from the dead, believe he died for the sins of the world. Now, I'm as convinced that he believes those things now as I was and am that George W. Bush believed them. However, from that moment on, from those beliefs on, Barack Obama can be and often is extremely left-leaning theologically and extremely left-leaning politically. One of the men I deeply admire and who's become something of a friend is Dr. Joel Hunter. Dr. Joel Hunter is a pastor of a very large evangelical church in Florida, about 20,000 people, I guess. And he's also on Barack Obama's board of spiritual advisors. Now, Dr. Joel Hunter is a conservative politically. He's an evangelical, a conservative theologically. He has ministered faithfully to Barack Obama and cared for his soul as best he could. But he, too, has said publicly that he was very surprised when Barack Obama sort of changed his views and came out in favor of gay marriage. This was a shift for Barack Obama. And when Barack Obama did come out in favor of gay marriage, he cited the Sermon on the Mount and the principle, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, those of us who know Scripture know that there are very specific statements in Scripture countering homosexuality and claiming it to be a sin and an abomination. I mean, in the Old Testament, it's a crime. However, that's not how Barack Obama reads the scriptures. So what I'm saying is that for Barack Obama to be a man who has asked Jesus to rule in his life and who has given his life to him as he understands that commitment, but then who is quite liberal theologically and quite liberal politically, that's not that uncommon in our day and our age. So it was a bit of a surprise to me when I said, yes, he's a serious Christian, but he's shaped by Jeremiah Wright and others on his theology, and he is left-leaning on his politics. And that is my conclusion to this day. If you had heard Barack Obama's testimony, personal testimony, at a recent White House Easter event, and also at the National Day of Prayer, I think you would have been stunned at how Christian it was. He believes in the redemptive work of Jesus Christ and uses words like born again and saved of himself. And yet, I would disagree with him on a huge number of his policy issues, and I would do so on the basis of Scripture. So it's not just an issue of Stephen Mansfield sort of speaking in his own defense 6 years later. It's a matter of us as a people becoming more sophisticated in our understanding of religion and how it shapes politics. I think there should have been more questions during the campaign. I think he should have been pressed more on exactly what he believed. I think that many people on the right, believing he was a Muslim erroneously, I'll have to say, kept them from engaging the real issues of what he believed. And even for those who contend with him politically and in the marketplace of ideas, they should have tried to understand who he was religiously and not just say, well, he has no religion or he's a Muslim. They missed the point. They missed who he really is. And therefore, they missed opportunities, for those who oppose him to defeat him. And for those who were simply trying to understand who he was, they missed one of the most important things about him. He's a work in progress. There are many influences in his life, but Barack Obama is a seriously Christian man who is confusingly, at least to someone like me, liberal theologically and liberal politically. That's what I said 6 years ago. It's what I believe now. And almost every other evangelical in his life and others around him who might not claim to be evangelicals, but with whom I speak on a regular basis, would affirm that to be true. So as we head into the 2016 election, let's be a little bit more sophisticated about religious issues. They're going to be huge in the upcoming election. Almost everyone running, as far as I know at this point, is faith-based in some way. There will be a clash of religious visions, and this is important for us to pay attention to.
Stephen Mansfield is a New York Times best-selling author, a popular speaker, and a frequent faith and culture commentator on CNN, Fox, and the Huffington Post. His groundbreaking books on faith and society include The Faith of George W. Bush, The Search for God in Guinness, Mansfield's Book of Manly Men, and The Miracle of the Kurds. You can learn more about Stephen at stephenmansfield.tv and greatman.us, and connect with him on Facebook and on Twitter under the name Mansfield Writes. The Stephen Mansfield podcast is produced by Isaac Darnell, who also wrote, performed, and produced the Rockin' Podcast theme song. Be sure to rate the Stephen Mansfield podcast in the iTunes Store. This is a Chartwell Literary Group production.